Awesome. We're excited to have Dr. Rachel Short from Shenandoah Conservatory here. She's an expert in teaching with technology. And wow, what a time to be teaching with technology, right? So she's
Yeah.
talked to us a lot about what she's done in the past and what she's doing now. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me and letting me talk to you about teaching. It's something I'm very passionate about. To share one of the reasons, this is not a technology question, but it happened over technology. I just this morning had a comment from a student. We were talking about modal borrowing, and I said, what's your favorite chord and why? And as a technology thing, so Canvas is our learning management system. As our daily online assignment, I had them write their favorite modal borrowing or modal mixture, you might know it as chord as Y. And the student said online she loved in a major key using the minor 4, and her comment was that she loved that in like C major playing F minor. She said even when she was in elementary school learning to play the piano. And I used our online technology, our Canvas, to write in the comments to that assignment. I said, that makes my music theory heart so tickled. That's really why I have this job, is now you can talk about, you always loved this in music. She said it gave her goosebumps. And I said, that's great. Now you know why it is that it gives you goosebumps. So we're just learning and explore things that you already loved, you've loved for years. So let's just explore them a little bit more. So it's fun to be able to use technology to keep teaching theory. And I am passionate about it for many reasons. I was asked the types of technologies that I use in my classroom, and I will use as in I used a couple of weeks ago and I'm using now, as the classroom itself is changing. I will say when I'm in a real classroom, face-to-face, I like walking around and being active with the class. I've never been kind of a sage on the stage behind the podium. I really like moving around and looking at the students. So a couple years ago, I made sure I had a clicker so that I could walk around and get close to students, walk in between them. Depending on your setting, if they've got really long desks, that can be tricky. But even just having a little clicker that allows you to move forward in your slides can give you more freedom. Using the little red pointer, then you can point up at the PowerPoint and say, hey, look at that note there. Unless you just want to run and point to the note, that works too. So that's kind of an early way of technology. And if you're still a writing on the board type of a person, that's fine too. Really, a marker. What is technology? Is it using a pencil? That's kind of, you could make that argument. But then when I got my lovely iPad here and pencil, it's actually not working so well with the virtual background. So I'll turn my virtual background off so you can see my iPad and pencil. That allowed me a lot more freedom within the classroom setting. So I could take this and in our rooms, I'll back up. At Shenandoah, we're an Apple certified teaching setting. So we have AirPlay in 92% of our classrooms. The music building is a little bit behind, but most of the classrooms do have AirPlay. And even if they don't, there's a workaround that you can connect this to your MacBook and then connect the MacBook to the wall. So it's possible. So then I would take this and AirPlay whatever I'm doing to the screen. So I could still walk around, but instead of having to run back over and write on the staff, I could walk around between the students and write things on the board using this, and it would project on the board from wherever I was in the room. So I could not only move my PowerPoint slides from this, but I could write on the PowerPoint slides with my Apple Pencil, which was pretty great. And I could also I use GoodNotes, but there's plenty other PDF markups or drawing programs anywhere you have either a simple 5-line staff or any handout that you've created ahead of time. Those are great. This is, I'll send you. And when I'm teaching, I like PowerPoints because it helps me stay on track. Otherwise, I tend to ramble. That's what I know about myself teaching. This will be kind of a rambling type of a presentation, so just hold on to your seatbelts. I like creating PowerPoints with handouts that students have ahead of time, so then they can follow along. It makes the best use of classroom time, because otherwise they're going to try and write down everything, and then 2 minutes later they've got all the notes. So if they have a handout that they can, or any type of like fill in the blank type of note taking that you're helping them with, here's your daily thing that's incomplete, and then they fill in the blanks. That can help you use your class time better. And since all the students have iPads and pencils themselves, I can create a handout, I share the link on Canvas, and then they are able to download it and just follow along and write in the blanks. And it saves trees. If you need to print out papers ahead of time, I recommend little slips so you're not printing out a whole paper for each student for each class. Just don't cut your fingers on the paper cutter. So that would be my kind of in-class technology in a classroom setting. I was telling someone Audacity is great and free, so you can prepare sound links ahead of time. So you don't have to, oh, what is the song? And let me find this part. If you said, you know, I want to start right here in the middle of the second verse, you've got your clip all ready to go. You can kind of have it slowly come up, and then after the clip, you fade out. So fade in and fade out. Just a little bit of ahead of time preparing any in-class examples. It can be really useful. And then you can play it again and go to the exact same spot. So getting ready for class ahead of time, that's why I like my PowerPoints, my musical examples all set. And if you want to do it differently, that's fine too. So in other ways I've used it in a classroom, in our Canvas, which is our LMS, our learning management system, I would have a PDF of something like an oral skills quiz. Well, this is a key that I can share with you. And so they would go into Canvas and they would say, all right, I'm going to take this quiz. So here is a key, but it would just be blank for them. And then it would say the rhythm. So they'd write the stuff there. They'd write solfege syllables here. They'd say do, re, sol, etc. And then they would submit that directly into Canvas. So that started about a year ago. And it's been a process getting all the students to bring their iPad and pencil charged to every class. I usually bring 2 or 3 hard copies for the students who just forgot, or they brought it, but it's not charged, because I didn't want them to be penalized for it. These are fairly like 10% of the grade worth assignments, our dictation quizzes. I think it was 2 weeks ago that I had the first class ever where no one needed my paper backup copy. So they're finally getting used to, oh, I actually do need to bring my technology to class every day, like I'm supposed to bring my notation paper and pencils to class every day and be prepared. It just takes a while. So because I've used more technology in a real, this is still a real classroom.
Face-to-face.
In a face-to-face. Well, see, we're still face-to-face.
We are face, right, in a
non-virtual.
Right, non-virtual.
Yes, in a non-virtual germ-filled classroom setting. Oh, that's another thing. My students are also used to collecting all homework assignments on Canvas. And then the first week they try and upload JPEGs or like 3 PDFs at once. And so I'm like, all right, you're not penalized, but next time, please make 1 PDF with however many pages, not accepting JPEGs because Canvas in SpeedGrader, it needs to be a PDF, 1 single PDF for everything. So it takes them a while to get used to a new system. But because we've been collecting homework on Canvas already, PDFs, they're used to that. They're used to doing virtual submissions or online submissions. Now that we are moving to a fully virtual classroom, it's made the transition a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. So we still have their iPads. Now you probably noticed what I did just there is I shared the screen. This is through Zoom. In Zoom, you can share a screen. The whiteboards are great, but I've been using iPad via AirPlay as a share method. So that's really fun.
I picked that up from you for my other classes, so that's great. Yeah.
So this is, I am talking to you from my MacBook, but then what you see is, this is from GoodNotes, but I can write on staff paper. That's great. Yesterday we were doing a species counterpoint review. So here's an example of a handout that I created for them. I will flip it this way. Another note, if you start using iPads for music, make sure you remind the student to pay attention to clefs, because we don't always remember, but then what if you're doing this and you go this way, you don't know, it could be two treble clefs. So I'm always like, okay, this is treble, that's bass, and my handwriting stinks, but we're working on that. So clefs, you'll need to think a little bit harder on remembering the clef. So I made this, and then in class, they were all on Zoom together, and we could look at it. Oh, wait, that's a fifth, but it's actually a diminished fifth, so it's dissonant. Oops, error there. And I am right by my piano at the moment, standing up, so I could play it as well and hear it. Sounds not great. In a perfect world, I'd have my nice speaker here, and I'd have a separate table for my coffee, but we're all in transition at the moment. So having this handout, like I said, they could follow along. Yesterday in my Zoom class, they did breakout rooms, and I had Zoom automatically create breakout rooms of 3 students. And then I said, go ahead and work on that and do some error ID together. That worked well with a couple of the groups. Another group, one of the people on Zoom was still technically there, but they weren't present at all. And so as the meeting host, I was able to go in to that group and say, hey, this classmate doesn't look like they're gonna join the group. Go ahead without them. And it then took that class probably another 5-8 minutes to figure out how to screen share. So it's a transition process. Not everyone has all of their resources with them. I think by the end of the week, students will be used to that and getting onto Zoom. The microphone, oh, I see that. Let's see, I love my necklace. That will go like this. There we go, we'll get some padding. So I just paid attention to the chat. I think that's useful when you're teaching over Zoom. You might have noticed in a classroom setting, students can be afraid to ask questions. I think in a virtual setting, if they're all muted, then they have to unmute themselves and then ask a question. So being even more available and saying, hey, you can ask a question this way, or you can ask a question that way, or you can do chat and I'll pay attention to that. Very cool. I'm gonna wait one moment and say, do you wanna do a who what? Yes, who what? You probably can't finish it. Okay. My other students are my children, and they did these amazing elephant and
they're
piggy.
so good. Yeah.
So Mo Willems, who is one of our favorite children book authors, is doing an online, come into my studio this month. It's great. I learn a lot about teaching from other things outside of music, and having kids has really made me think about learning and what's interesting and what's new. I watch YouTube videos just for fun. Then I'm like, oh, that's cool how they show this visually. All right, I've been talking for a while. Let me see if I answered your actual question. Technologies that I use in my classroom. I think I've talked a lot about that.
And I think that the GoodNotes thing, I mean, I use GoodNotes because I learned it from you. And I think the ability, and you're the one that talked about Zoom, and the airplay between Zoom is pretty quick. And GoodNotes to me has been really easy on my iPad. So I do have 2 questions. One, well, I guess it's just one. How are the students getting the iPads and the iPencil? Apple Pencil.
I would say that SU is lucky as part of getting this Apple Everywhere. We have an I am learning. All students as freshmen are, at least currently the undergrads, getting iPads and pencils as part of their school package.
Oh.
So they pay as part of their tuition, and then it gets to them. So they all have them, at least our freshmen and sophomores. Our juniors and seniors don't all, and the grad students don't even have Macs. So it's made things a little awkward, especially even last week when we were frantically going, how are we going to teach online? One of my first thoughts was, well, all adjuncts should also have technology that they probably should have had a while ago, but anyone teaching classes should have the same resources across the board. So getting the grad student TAs access to even a video. One of my TAs who was teaching a sight singing class with me she had a PC, but she didn't have any type of a video. So we said, well, in the meantime, you can get Zoom through your phone and get some audio that way. But trying to make sure there's equitable technology is tricky. And in our case, they should all have it. Some of them left it at school and it's locked up at the moment, but most of them have their iPads already. Even as a teacher, you can still do that. There's a way to share a screen so multiple participants can share. But I think if you do a whiteboard, they can ask questions and you can write on it, or you can trade sharing the screens.
So we
you can have
Apple Pencil
people write on a whiteboard at the same time, for sure.
Right. With your Apple Pencil, which I don't have, can that write anywhere on your iPad?
No.
Versus a regular stylus, what's the benefit?
I don't have a regular stylus, so I'm not really sure. Another thing that I have done, if you have probably a stylus, if you have a Mac and an iPad, is you can use the sidecar thing. And if you want to write anywhere. So let me open up a preview PDF of something. Let's see. All right, so I just opened up a PDF in preview. I'm going to, here, let me share my entire screen first. I'll share, from Zoom, I'm going to share something, not my whole desktop, but the PDF that I opened, which is called Angles Workshop. So you can see that in preview.
Right.
Once I'm going to move this around. In preview, I can go to Window, move to iPad.
Okay.
So now it shows up on my iPad, and then I can use the draw function. I'm using my pencil. You probably could use a regular stylus too. Use this one. Can you see this then?
I can't, actually.
I think I need to switch. Oh, that's because I paused my screen share. Why did I do that? Resume share.
There you go. Oh, okay.
Okay. So it's called Sidecar. It's how the Mac and the iPad work together if you're on the same account. And I'm figuring it out. But that's a way, even if you don't have good notes, but if there's something specific that you want to mark up, you can do that.
Okay.
It's not as wonderful as good notes, and it's more like big chunks. But if you're doing big things like that, if you want a quick score markup and you don't have good notes, that's a good way to do it.
Okay.
I'm moving this window back to Mac. So you're doing things in preview, write up, that type of thing, moving between it. And that's a fun thing.
I think one of the last questions, and thank you so much for your time, is just 3 skills. This is coming from our pedagogy students. 3 skills that you think future music theory educators should master before they graduate.
I think the first skill that I would say is the skill of learning and flexibility. And it's not just theory educators, but all educators, and I think all musicians should. And you can't ever master it, because it's a humble attitude to know that what you know now is great, but things are going to change. And so that flexibility and the willingness to learn new methods or new types of things or new ways to do things. So the skill, I guess, would be being flexible and being a constant learner. That would be one. I think listening is really important. These are, again, broad. It could be any educator, but I think it's important for music theory educators, because every year your students will have different questions and different problems. And so being able to figure out how they're getting at it and where they're going wrong is important. Yeah. And I had a third one, and then it just left my mind. Oh, I would say communication, skills in communicating. And again, that could be all educators. But when you are trying to communicate about music, particularly, that's a different type of communication. it can go across different methods. Are you trying to do it by just playing the piano and saying, listen to this interval? Are you trying to do it by talking about the interval? I was thinking about that in technology because in Canvas, so I had my students in a sight singing class record a video of themselves doing 2 rhythms, and that was their daily assignment last week. It's actually one of them did a fantastic video, which you're welcome to share. I'll share the link. But I was trying to type in the comments about giving them feedback. And when you're doing face-to-face, you can tell them and you can say, hey, you did this, or instead of this, and give them verbal feedback as well as written prose feedback. But I think when you are giving comments or feedback or teaching about music, it can be a little bit trickier to put into words. And this was the problem. In Canvas, there is a general thing where you can give a media comment as well. So you can record yourself, or in this case, I was going to try and do a audio feedback. So I could do the rhythm the way that they'd done it and then do it the correct way. However, since everyone's now trying to get on Zoom and Canvas, it was a little slow. And days later, the audio file is still processing. So I went back and I tried to write it in prose, write my same comment in prose. And it took me longer. I had to think, okay, how do I say this? It would have been easier to just do it. So to bring that back to the question of a skill as a music theory educator, thinking through how you're communicating in different methods, whether it's, I think applied teachers are just like, let me do it, and then you do it. And that type of mimicking or listening and making sounds. But theory, we're trying to describe that in prose as well as sounds. And so being able to talk and communicate well about music and all these different types is a good skill to have.